You are listening to the Bat Flip Podcast, a baseball podcast from Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Damian and Matt.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Bat Flip Podcast. My name is Damian here with my co-host, Matt. We are coming to you on October 19th of 2021. We've had a postseason baseball's in full swing. We're moving on to the championship series. We had a wild Game 5 in the NLCS between the Dodgers and the Giants. And we've had some pretty interesting games so far through the three of the NLCS that we've had. And Game 3 is currently going on as we're recording this in the ALCS. But before we jump into everything going on, let's bring in Matt and see how's your last week been?
It's been good. Just hanging out, doing normal things, and so I mean, not too much to complain about right now. It's been a fun week.
Yeah, it has been. I've been getting so much crap for this, the way Game 5 ended, and then what's been happening so far in this in this NLCS. But overall, it was a good week. There was some exciting games of baseball, some exciting football games going on even this weekend. It's a good time to be a sports fan. I mean, as we're recording this, the NBA is kicking back off as well if you're a basketball fan. So it's kind of everything's happening all at once. So it's pretty fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And with football and college football in full swing, and watch my Auburn Tigers win on Saturday, big win, and it's been a lot of fun. So
it really has been. Well, let's start off looking at the Game 5 that we had between the Dodgers and Giants, and then we'll jump over to the ALCS between the Astros and the Red Sox. But that Game 5 was one of the most anticipated games of the year. It was the two best teams from baseball this year going head to head. Both of them going into the game had 109 wins on the season, combined through the regular season and the postseason. And I mean, it would pretty much lived up to everything you could have hoped for from it.
yeah, no doubt. Very low scoring game. You saw Logan Webb is one of those pitchers that kind of came out of nowhere this year, and we've talked about him a pretty good bit over the course of the season. But I mean, in the postseason was incredible. He's a little bit, to me, a little bit reminiscent of Kluber in the postseason when Corey Kluber he was a robot, and people called him the Klubot. And it kind of, Logan Webb reminds me a little bit of that when it comes to his postseason pitching, and also kind of the way he came up as somebody who, Corey Kluber was fairly well heralded. He was a top 30 prospect, but he wasn't like a top 10 in baseball prospect or anything like that. Logan Webb's kind of the same way. A lot of people liked his command. They didn't especially believe in the fastball. He found a couple ticks on it, and sometimes when you just locate pitches extremely well, it works out. So Logan Webb pitched a great game. The Dodgers went with the bullpen game, in which Julio Urias was kind of their bulk guy, and it went very well for them. They were able to. One of the things the Giants did all year was get that platoon advantage, and going with the bullpen game, it's more difficult to get that platoon advantage. And what ended up happening was, there were a couple times where they were able to get that mid game, but there were a lot of at bats they couldn't get that platoon advantage. Whereas if the Giants had gone with a traditional starter and Urias, then they probably would have been able to load up their lineup with those right-handed hit bats like Darren Ruff and all those guys, for to face lefty. But what ended up happening was they kind of called the bluff of them, and it turns out that those lefty killer bats they have ended up having to face the right-handed relievers of the Dodgers early in the game, which kind of got them behind the eight ball a little bit. So it's a very interesting strategy the Dodgers used. Of course, Urias did end up coming into the game. And then, later in the game, it was very low scoring. Both teams pitched extremely well.
Yeah, and so the scoring really kicked off in the sixth, and that's when the Dodgers first got on with Seager doubling Mookie Betts home in the top of the sixth. And then right in the bottom of the sixth, like you said, Urias was in, and Ruff was in the lineup actually, supposed to be in there to face Urias, and they put him in the lineup before, and he had already driven two to the warning track in this game, and then Urias just left a curveball right over the middle, and Ruff, it was one of the farthest home runs I've actually seen hit to center field in San Francisco. I think it went like 460 or something. It was like a moonshot, and that basically tied it right up back in the sixth, and then it went all the way down until the ninth inning, where I believe the Dodgers got a couple walks in, and then they brought, or it was a hit maybe against Tyler Rogers and then a walk. Then they brought in their closer, which is Camilo Doval, to face Cody Bellinger. And the big thing for Doval is he has a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, and he uses that a lot. Against Bellinger, he went like 5 or 6 straight sliders, and on the sixth one, Bellinger was able to pull it into the right center field gap and bring home. I forgot who it was, but anyways, bringing home the go-ahead run to 2-1. And then, like you even mentioned on the last episode, and I even kind of shut you down, like, oh, I don't think they're going to do that. Like, they'll just save him. They brought in Scherzer in the ninth inning to close it out. They had used Trinan in the seventh, Jansen in the eighth, and then they used Scherzer in the ninth to close it out. And then the game ended on a very controversial check swing that really wasn't. The guy did not swing, and Wilmer Flores, and the umpire called it, really early. There's been different angles where it's looked closer than what the TV actually showed at the beginning, but it absolutely was not a swing. And there was a lot of controversy from that move, from that call, I should say.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that a 107 win season ends on that call. Like that that's so unfortunate. I mean, now were they gonna be able to score? Who knows? Probably not, but you never know. And that's kind of the thing about baseball. You kind of ruin that game with the umpires getting involved. But
Yeah.
for one thing, I mean, check swing calls are so difficult. I mean, they really are because it's your umpires is 90 feet away or more than 90 feet away, really, and trying to see down the line. And I mean, it's such a quick, these bats are so quick, and I mean, it's really tough to see. It's honestly easier to see on TV and but in real time. But then when they slow it down, even, I mean, some of these are so close, and in slow mo it's easy to see. But I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on the fact that that's such a tough call. But you cannot end the game on that. It's just, you got to have their best umpires out there in winner take all games like that. And obviously, it ended on a mistake. But I mean, it's one of those things. If you're the Giants, I mean, you got yourself in a situation where you were trailing with down to your last strike. So, you know, if you don't want the umpires to be involved, then do something different earlier in the game. And the same thing for different scenarios where there people complaining about the umpires in this off season or this postseason. So, not that I don't wish they would improve it, because I wish they would, but I mean, at the same time, that's kind of the way it is right now. So you kind of gotta complaining about the umpires isn't gonna do all that much when it comes to this year.
Yeah, and like you said, you hate that a game of this magnitude, which was an amazing game just as a baseball fan, it didn't have all the runs scored, but you could tell it was the playoff atmosphere. Like, you could tell San Francisco was rocking. I mean, they were involved in every pitch pretty much. Um, but a couple things. For one, the umpire at first base, he came out like almost immediately after the game, and was once he saw the replay, and he admitted full-heartedly that he made a mistake. That is very rare that umpires will say, "Hey, I messed up here," and that shouldn't have been the call. He fully admitted it. He went into the Giants clubhouse as soon as he saw the replay and went and apologized to the team directly. So good on Gabe Morales, the umpire, for admitting he was wrong and going there. And then also on a bunch of the Giants players and Gabe Kapler, they could have easily come out and said, it's a BS call and nothing should happen, like all this stuff. And they all pretty much just said, like, hey, we shouldn't have been in that situation to begin with. Like, we had them up, or we were up 2-1. All we had to do was win one game. We didn't get that done. And we put ourselves, like you said, in that situation in a game 5, late in the game, that we had to, we relied on the umpires and we didn't get the job done ourselves. And that's not something that you would really see many teams or many organizations do, especially after a game against their biggest rivals ended in that scenario and ended their season where they were the best team in the game.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, it's like, what are you gonna do? I mean, the season's over whether you complain about it or not. So, sometimes taking the high road will get you. It'll get you. You'll have better relationships with umpires in the future. You'll have, I mean, regardless of how satisfying it could be to just come out and trash the guy. I mean, he obviously made a mistake and he knows it. He probably feels horrible about it. I mean, so that's unfortunate. But of course, that was a crappy way to end such a great game and a great season from the Giants. But at the same time, um, I mean, it's pretty likely that that wasn't the determining factor in the game anyway. So I mean, you never know, like I say, but um, you know, that's definitely the kind of the way I took it, was that the Giants, they have reasons to be upset about that, but and I, of course, as a if it happened to my team, I would be furious too. But um, at the same time, it's like, well, they didn't get it done the rest of the game. They had the Dodgers in a bullpen game, and they only scored one run off of them, so
Yep.
2 runs. I think it was 2 runs, but
One, because it ended
it was
2-1.
one. Yeah, so I mean, if you're in that situation, you just gotta figure out how to win that game, and uh, but um, but moving on, the Dodgers advanced to the NLCS, and that's been a great series so far, and right now the Astros and the Red Sox are also playing in the American League Championship Series, so um, looking at games 1, 2, and 3, of course, Game 4 is currently ongoing in the ALCS. But looking at games 1, 2, and 3, what's your thoughts on this series so far?
Yeah, the ALCS has been absolutely insane. You saw Houston come out in the first game and battle back and get that win 5-4, and then game two it was pretty much over. From the start, pretty much. I think it was in the first inning. Boston hit 2 grand slams, or maybe it was one in the first, one in
Yeah,
the
it was
second.
one in the first and one in the second, I think.
Yeah, one of the first, one in the second. And went up 8-0 right away, and then they even scored in the fifth or the fourth inning to make it 9-0, and the game kind of felt like out of reach. Houston did come back and get three in the bottom of the fourth, to make it 9-3, but it just felt like that was a Boston win. They took really that Houston crowd right out of it. Tied up that series, which was big for them to head back to Boston with a tied series, and have a chance to clinch at home if they were to sweep the Astros once they did get back to Boston. And then game three was just another one of those where
It's,
Boston just came out and
it's really a carbon copy, except the
yeah,
second one wasn't a grand slam. It was just a 3-run homer. I mean,
yeah, they
or a
scored
2-run homer or something.
they scored 6 in the second. Boston did. They scored another 3 in the third and made it 9-0 again. And then Houston came back in the top of the fourth, got another 3, make it 9-3, and then Boston just came back and tacked 2 on in the sixth and 1 on the eighth to win 12-3. And it's just really that the Boston bats have showed up. We said that was going to be the thing, which team was going to be able to hit the pitching of the other team better. And it's big for Houston to have lost Lance McCullers to where he's not
Yes.
on this roster. I don't think he was actually technically out when we recorded the episode
No,
before.
he with the forearm strain, he's not on the roster, and that has been a huge deal of this series right now.
Yeah, I mean, he was our player of the series for Houston against the White Sox. And for him to not be on the roster, and if they make the World Series, potentially not even be on that roster, it's been massive for them. They've had to, like Zach Greinke started the game today, which was his first start in a month for Houston. And that didn't go particularly well right away either. So they're pretty much every game's kind of like a bullpen game for Houston right now. And that's kind of where it's just allowing, we talked about in the last episode, where if you do those bullpen games enough, the odds are that once you swing that door open one too many times, that guy's just not going to have it. And in the postseason, that's just really hard to come back from. So it'll be
Yeah,
interesting. And I don't know, what is the score of game
it,
4?
it's currently 2-1 in the bottom. They're going to the top of I think the top of the sixth, might be the top of the fifth. But
Top of the
the Red
6th.
Sox, yeah, top of the sixth. So the Red Sox just had a runner on and struck out, swinging. Christian Javier is doing his best job keeping the Astros in this series right now, and they really need to win tonight. You don't want to go down 3-1. It's not insurmountable, but that's really difficult. So, but looking forward at this series, or looking back at those first 3 games, I think the biggest, like you said, the biggest thing to me has been the fact that with Houston's pitching injuries and lack of consistency there in the starting rotation, they're really having to throw a ton of guys. And I think Houston does have a little bit better offense, as in it's a little bit deeper. Um, you know, I think that a lot of times in the postseason, you need to have one or two good horses to rely on, two good starters, regardless of whether you pitch them out of the bullpen or pitch them out as a starter. You got to have a couple guys who really can put on some bulk innings. And you look at, even if you look back in the past, then I mean, you look at Lance McCullers as that guy. He's been there, done that. Back in 2017, he pitched out of the bullpen a lot in the postseason, even though he was a starter. But he would pitch in 3 or 4 innings out of the bullpen and closed out games. You look at last year for the Dodgers, Julio Urias did that. He pitched 3 or 4 innings out of the bullpen, closing out games last year, and that's really important to have those starters you can rely on, whether you're starting them traditionally or coming out of the bullpen as bulk guys. And that's something where you look at the Astros, and they really just don't have too many of those guys. They got a good back end of the bullpen. The closing situation is good. They've got a couple other nice relievers that can come in at the back end, but with different pitching injuries and stuff they've had, like Valdez has not had a healthy season. McCullers obviously is out. Greinke's been in and out of the game for the last month or two. I mean, they just don't have those starters right now, and that's really struggling. While the Red Sox do have, Eduardo Rodriguez is still there. They've got Nate Valdi is very good. I mean, those guys can come in, get you 6 innings, even if they do give up 2 or 3 runs. That'll give the Red Sox offense a chance, and then they don't expose that lower end part of their bullpen. So that's just something to look at with the way that this series has gone. It's really a struggle. I mean, the Astros starting pitching, I think in every game except maybe game one, I think in every game has lasted like 2 innings at the most. So I mean, it's gonna be hard to win that way in the postseason.
Yeah, and you got to give credit to Boston for not only are they hitting well, but they're also able to keep guys like Jose Altuve, Michael Brantley, and Alex Bregman from really doing much this series at all. I mean, Altuve has an 083 batting average and a 143 on base. You look at Brantley and Bregman, they both have a 167 batting average and 167 on base. So they haven't walked at all, and Altuve only has one walk. Those are three guys who Houston relies on quite a bit to be very big um, playmakers for their offense. Yordan Alvarez has had a nice series. Correa's had a good series, and Tucker's had a good series. But if you
Yeah.
can't have that the middle of that lineup, if you have one guy at the top, one guy here, one guy there, that's doing something, while the other guys in the middle aren't really doing anything, it really allows Boston to, if they get those bats rolling, they feel pretty confident about being able to keep these other guys down, and they've done a great job with that so far. So if they can keep that up, it's definitely a recipe for success for them.
Yeah, and I think that the story of the series, as you said, I agree 100%. And then, they just pulled up the stat. I was talking about the Astro starters. They've pitched 4 innings in the series. This is game 4, and they've given up 12 earned runs in those 4 innings. So, they're averaging 1 inning per start, and they've given up 12 runs. So that's kind of, and along those lines, I mean, it's not like the Astros haven't hit at all. I mean, they scored like what 6-7 runs in game 1. They won the game. Game 2, I think they came back and scored 5 or 6 runs, and then in game 3 they scored 3 or 4 runs. So it's not like they're setting the world on fire compared to what the Red Sox are doing. But it's not it hadn't been the hitting. Their bats haven't really been the problem, even without their top 3 guys producing. Just the fact that they're getting absolutely clobbered by Kike Hernandez and Kyle Schwarber and Rafael Devers and JD Martinez and Xander Bogaerts. I mean, that lineup is just so deep, and it's kind of hard to believe that we didn't see that coming into the season with the names that they had in that lineup.
Yeah, it really has been, and I think a lot of us didn't even think Boston was going to be in there, early on coming into this season. But credit for them for real. Like Kike has been a big part for them for this postseason run. Devers has stepped up, like you said, Bogarts, but even a guy like Christian Arroyo, he doesn't have a high on base, but he's still batting 273 in this series, and he's had a decent postseason so far. They just kind of have found a couple of those under the radar guys um, that they kind of always seem. It used to be Brock Holt for many years with them. He used to be a guy who, no matter in the big situation, would always just find some way to get a hit or whatever. So Boston has some way of being able to find these kind of under the radar guys that produce when the lights are the biggest.
Yeah, they do, and it's reminiscent of a lot of teams that have built really nice stretches like the Red Sox have at times, and really like the Astros have done the last several years. It's very reminiscent of of some of those teams. I mean, you look at even the Dodgers with some of the guys that they've had come up big and that weren't really that were kind of under heralded guys like Max Muncy and Justin Turner. It's kind of that type of thing. But the Red Sox are doing it maybe not quite to the same extent, but in a similar way. So, but it's been an interesting series going forward in it. Obviously a lot depends on what happened. The outcome of tonight's game is, if the Red Sox go up 3-1, I don't think the Astros are going to be able to pitch consistently enough to hit their way out of this mess, being down 3-1 in the series. If they tie it, all bets are off. The series will for sure go back to Houston. We'll see, but and then if you look at the other side of things, if you're Boston, don't let them believe a little bit. Get that win tonight. Force them to come out and pitch. Whoever has to pitch tomorrow, I would assume it'd be. I'm not sure who it would even be. I mean, because it would be McCuller spot in the rotation up again, and nobody's in that spot right now. So, Game 5 would be your Game 1 starter. So, I think did Luis Garcia start Game 1?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it will be Garcia again. So, we'll see, or for maybe Fromber Valdez or somebody. But, yeah, it'll be difficult for that to be for you to come back in the series down 3-1 with this situation their pitching is in. But if you win tonight, it obviously it goes back to Houston. That's a tough place to play, especially with the fans there this year. And I mean, you never know what might happen. Especially, I mean, it's not like the Red Sox pitching staff is some kind of like juggernaut, anyways. So, we'll see what might happen. But definitely an interesting series so far out in the American League.
Yeah, well, let's jump over to the National League and talk about what's going on in that one, because all three games that have happened so far have been, I mean, and I know we're going to be kind of a little biased here because we're Dodgers and Braves fans, and this is the matchup, but I think they've been instant classic
Oh
games.
my
I mean, all
gosh.
three of them. Game 1 was a game that you were going to have Max Scherzer was supposed to start, but then once he closed out the Game 5, he pretty much said that his arm wasn't feeling right and didn't pitch Game 1. So the Dodgers ended up going with a bullpen game against Max Fried. Gave up a run right in the first. The Dodgers came back right in the second and got that run back. And then in the fourth inning, I think it was Will Smith hit a homer.
Yep.
Off Fried to give them the 2-1 lead. And then right in the bottom of the fourth, Austin Riley came back up and hit a mammoth homer. I mean, it's one of the farthest homers that I had saw. Like, I knew as soon as it went off the bat, I was like, that is long gone. Didn't it go second deck or something?
No, I think it was. I think it was a line shot, and it was like
Was it?
430 or 420
Yeah,
or something. Yeah, I mean, he
on
hit
the
it on the
line.
line, but it was like 112 mile an hour off the bat. I mean, he crushed it. So
Yeah, and then they went to it. Pretty much stayed 2-2 all the way until the ninth inning, until Austin Riley came up and walked that game off.
yeah, it was that was obviously a great game. You had a pitching matchup where Max Fried, he pitched pretty well. He really didn't have his best stuff. He's been. I don't. People haven't really talked about him as much this year, because of his start, but his second half has been incredible to the season. And you look at what he's done, and in his postseason career, he's been incredible as well. So he pitched 6 innings of 2-run ball. The Braves, really the only team in the LCS that have been going with a traditional starter type thing. So Max Fried pitched that well, and then the Braves bullpen in games 1 and 2. We'll get to game 2 in a minute, but the Braves bullpen pitching in game 1, they've been using the same 3 guys every single night in the postseason. In the division series, they use the same guys, and in the championship series, they've used the same guys, and it's been Tyler Matzik, Luke Jackson, and Will Smith. And Will Smith came in and was a little shaky, but he was able to get the out on a Chris Taylor base running mistake. That was kind of a bad base running mistake. He rounded second on a Bellinger single and kind of froze, and Jock Peterson threw behind him and tagged it, and they got him in a rundown with 2 outs. So then the Braves in the bottom of the inning come up, and I believe they were facing Trinan, and
Yeah.
they got a single, or yeah, they were facing Tryon and they got a hit from I don't remember who got I think Albies got a bloop hit, stole second, and then Riley, singled into the left field corner to win the game. Then game two was really similar. You had a Corey Seager home run in the first inning, a 2-run homer, put the Dodgers up. The Braves came back in the fourth with Jock Peterson hit the longest home run of the postseason so far, 454 feet.
A tank.
Yeah, it was. It was above it hit over the Chop House in Atlanta, which is the little restaurant in right field, and it hit it up on the roof of it. I don't think I've ever seen somebody hit a ball that far in that area of the ballpark. It seems like most of the time it ends up getting into the Chop House or into the into the seats up there for whatever reason. But he hit one over the Chop House, which is pretty crazy. And then you had, the game kind of kept going back and forth a little bit. The Dodgers picked up a couple runs, and then probably the most controversial decision of the postseason so far from a manager. You had Dave Roberts had Bruce Dark-Gratterall, Blake Trinan, and Kenley Jansen in his bullpen, and he decided to go with Julio Urias coming out of the bullpen after he had pitched, several innings in game, or not several, but I think he pitched 4 innings in game 5 for the NLDS.
Yeah, it was something. I think it
So
was three and a
three,
third or
three and a
four or something.
third, 3 and a third or 4, and then he came in and he threw. They brought him in to throw an inning late in the game with a 2-run lead in game 2 on 2 days rest, and his stuff looked okay, but he couldn't locate it, and he hung a couple curveballs, and it did not go well for them. That you had a hit from Eddie Rosario, then a hit from Ozzy Albies, and then you had the biggest piece of the biggest hit of the game, and Austin Riley hit a absolute bullet off the left center field wall that brought in Albies with some really aggressive base running too, to tie the game. And then in the bottom of the ninth, they had Gratterall in. Um, you had a hit from, I think, Dansby Swanson got a hit, and then with two outs, Eddie Rosario lined a single up the middle that hit off of Seager's glove and went into center field. The Braves ended up winning the game. So very crazy games, both on walk-off wins for the Braves. They kind of, game one, the Braves kind of knew they had to win game one because of the pitching matchup. Game two, I think most people were expecting the Dodgers to win, but kind of the story of game two was that Max Scherzer, especially after the post game, Max Scherzer really struggled going deep into that game because of because of fatigue. So we'll see what happens there later in the series.
Yeah, and actually, I think that ninth inning was off Jansen.
Yeah, he had the Gratterall came in and got faced a few guys, and then they put in Jansen with 2 outs. So
yeah, I think, and the way they had Seager up the middle, I think the ball was kind of like blocked by Jansen for a lot
it
of the way,
was.
and then it kind of like threw Seager because it was so
Yeah, it
fast
was.
and at that. But
Yeah, I didn't mean to sound like it was fully on Seager. I mean, I think a
no,
really good shortstop probably makes that play,
yeah,
but I mean, it was an absolute laser too. It was like a
yeah,
107 off the bat, and it was a liner, so
yeah, it was a
really tough
really rough.
play.
Put the Braves up 2-0, then heading to Los Angeles. I think it was really vital for the Braves to get that 2-0 lead because
Yeah,
then they put all the pressure on the Dodgers going into Los Angeles. If all they have to do, I mean, no matter what, if the Dodgers wanted to win this series now, the Braves forced it to get back to Atlanta,
yeah,
where they would have to win a game in Atlanta now to win the series. But it put all of the pressure on the Dodgers because, I mean, what do the Braves have to lose at this point? You go up to 3-0 if you're able to win game 3 tonight, or that happened today, or you go down 2-1, but you've basically faced Scherzer and Bueller. If you're down 2-1, you got Urias, and then a bullpen game coming for game 5, and you've already won against a bullpen game already. So game 5 started off pretty much as game 4 or game 2 did. It was a pretty much identical thing. Mookie gets on right away. Corey Seager hits a 2-run homer, and then Charlie Morton kind of was like laboring through it.
man, he looked awful
Yeah,
in center.
he couldn't locate. His curveball was really rough, but he held it to only two runs. And I think there was at one point it was like through 3 innings he had like 6 walks or
Yep.
4 walks or something, and like it was just awful. But he was able to keep the Dodgers to 2 runs, and then I believe it was in the 4th inning is when they really started getting to Bueller. I was at work during this, so I was trying to watch it, but listen at the same time, and then driving home. Um, but I know I think it was in the fourth when they came back, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. So what happened was in the fourth, you had a leadoff double from Austin Riley that he hit. It's a well hit ball, but it was misplayed by Lux. It was ruled a double, but it probably could have been an error. He didn't really play it right in center field. Of course, Gavin Lux, I think this was like his 11th game ever in the big leagues in center field.
Yeah.
So he really hadn't. He's really kind of raw out there. He's got the athleticism to do it, but he's still learning. And it was just kind of one of those plays where he was kind of close to the wall and he was trying to look for the wall and stuff, and he just kind of misplayed it. And then the wheels kind of fell out for the for Walker Bueller. He ended up, against Jock Peterson had a Jock Peterson ended up singling in the first run. I think Albies was actually aboard before the Riley double, so they were second and third, and then Jock Peterson singled in a run, and then you had then the wheels just kind of fell off. He ended up starting to walk guys, struggle with command. You ended up getting a single from Duvall that tied the game. I think Dansby Swanson had the go-ahead hit with a single, and then Walker Bueller walked with 2 outs after Morton hit for himself. He walked Eddie Rosario with the bases loaded to make it a 4-2 lead for Atlanta. So it was really not a good outing for Walker Bueller. His stuff from the beginning just didn't look that great. The Braves had 2 hits in the first inning that they kind of Ozzy Albies came up as the third guy and lined out to center, and for whatever reason Rosario was off the bag and got doubled up. And after that, I mean, Walker Bueller's stuff just didn't look. I mean, he didn't look sharp the whole game. And then the walks really started to come back to bite him there in the 4th inning, and then the game, it kind of went to a stalemate for a while. Both teams. I think the Braves picked up a run in the next inning, but then late in the game, Cody Bellinger came up with 2 guys on a couple of hits that got through. One was a little broken bat single down the right field line, and then the other one was a ball that Will Smith hit up the middle, and it probably should have been a double play ball. It was kind of it was a pretty well hit grounder, but it got through. The Braves weren't positioned, to make that play, and then Cody Bellinger hit a ball about 6 inches to a foot above the strike zone for a 3-run homer to tie it, and then the wheels fell off for the Braves and Luke Jackson in the 8th inning.
Yeah, and that homer for Bellinger was really big because he had been a guy who had obviously struggled all year long, but his main kryptonite that he had dealt with this year was fastballs like 94 and above, high in the zone. And that was a 96-mile-an-hour fastball, like you said, about 6 to 8 inches above the plate. It was kind of like at his neck. If he's standing up straight like he does, it was basically at his neck. And for him to basically get on top of that ball and be able to drive it, I think it was like 400 feet exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good sign for Cody Bellinger after he'd been with all the swing changes this year. He's looked more comfortable at the plate, but the one thing that you just hadn't seen yet was the power. He hadn't been able to show that he has that power still. And for him to be able to finally locate on that pitch and be able to, not only catch up to it and make contact, which he hasn't done all year long, but to still have that power behind it. Fastball up is still probably one of the easier pitches to hit out because it's already high and you're able to get under it. But for him, at least, that was maybe it's a sign of he's starting to break out back into, what normal Cody Bellinger would be like.
Yeah, it might be. The one thing about that was that the pitch before it was the same pitch, and he was way late on it, and it really wasn't a good pitch. It probably should have been hit for the home run. The pitch before it was like a fastball. It was slightly, it was in the zone, but it was probably at the letters, and he just was way late on it. I think he just said, "Okay, I was late on that." They know this is the pitch I struggle with, and he just completely sold out on it. And the Braves just threw him another one, and that was difficult. Honestly, Luke Jackson, every pitch he threw in that sequence was really not that bad. I mean, the hits that he gave up were all 3 of the hits he gave up were out of the zone. So it was really an interesting, it was a credit to the Dodgers on being able to put the bat on the ball and and get those hits in, and then Bellinger got the big hit. That probably, say it really saved the Dodgers season, because if they lost today, the series was over. If they had lost today, really, I mean, the way that team was looking, and right now, you still like where the Braves sit, up 2-1, but the Dodgers have some momentum, and I think the blueprint is for the Braves. You got to win one of the next two now, and kind of, I think the Braves really need to not get in that elimination game, in the first game back in Atlanta. I think with the Braves bullpen depth, they really need to be leading in the series when they go back to Atlanta. So if the Braves win game 4, or game 5, I think you kind of like where you sit still. If you don't, if the Dodgers come back tomorrow or the day after and win again, both games, you still do go back to Atlanta, but that's going to be a struggle for the Braves at that point, because of the pitching matchups and the lack of ability to go deep into your bullpen, because that's really where I feel like the Dodgers have an advantage, because today it shows a perfect example. If the Braves got down 5-2 in like the 6th inning, they would probably be basically tossing the game away by pitching an arm that's not good. Dodgers don't have any arms that are just complete toss away arms. Like when they go into their bullpen, they bring out somebody who's got a lot of talent, throws hard, and I mean the Braves, you look at the Dodgers, they're bringing in a guy like, Joe Kelly in the 7th inning of a 3-run game. And I mean, that's the situation where the Braves are probably pitching Drew Smiley, who barely made the roster, or Chris Martin, or something like that. So, very difficult, for the Braves to win this series if they get into those, winner go home games, with their pitching depth. But especially if it's the Ian Anderson start, that gets up in that situation, because you just never know what you're going to get from him.
Yeah, and so just to wrap up what happened the rest of Game 3, Chris Taylor ended up singling
Yeah,
right after the homer, and then I think he stole second, and then they had Matt Beatty pinch hitting, and he grounded out to
grounded. Yeah,
second, and then Mookie doubled to right field to give them the lead, and then they brought Jansen in, who Jansen has been ever since he got booed off the mound has been insane. I saw a stat, I think, that he's faced 17 hitters in the postseason so far.
yeah,
He
he
struck
struck
out
out like
12 of
12
them.
or something. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So
just it kind of looks like vintage Kenley Jansen again. I mean, he looks so confident in all of his pitches. It used to be just that cutter, but now he's added that like sinker / two seam and the slider, which is, it just allows them to not sit on the cutter all the time. But he still throws the cutter most of the time.
yeah.
It's just enough to keep people honest and keep them off of that pitch as much.
Yeah, well, you can tell too when a team faces him, because his sliders he threw tonight were not very good. I mean, he threw one to Jock Peterson that was just right down the middle, but they're so not used to seeing it from him
Yep.
that, I mean, they're taking it because they're just surprised when it comes.
Yep.
So it's definitely, and that's one of those things that when you have a one pitch pitcher like that, I mean, his cutter can get him can be fantastic, but get him off the cutter and you're going to be even better. So that's something that's really helped him out. And I think sometimes relievers fall in love with one pitch, and you gotta figure out a second pitch to throw. So, but I think the series, there's been so many momentum shifts and swings. I mean, you had the Dodgers coming in feeling really good about themselves after winning Game 5. They're the 106 win team, the defending champions. And the Braves are able to take Game 1 in walk off fashion. Then the Dodgers lead 4-2, and or they did lead 2-0. Then they led 4-2 in Game 2, and the Braves were able to come back and take it. The Braves had all the momentum in the series. They come out, they go up 5-2, and then the Dodgers have their comeback win and flip the momentum. So, right now it feels like the Braves. It's a time where you can really just kind of sit back and take a step back and say, okay, we're still up 2-1. You've got you got a bullpen game tomorrow, really for both teams, since Urias pitched in Game 2. I think he probably isn't going to be overextended too much. But Game 5 is a definite bullpen game for the Dodgers, whereas it sounds like Max Fried will be going on regular rest for the Braves in Game 5. So, you feel like you got an advantage there. You don't know what you're going to get from Scherzer because of his fatigue. He might end up coming back and being fully ready to go for Game 6 or Game 7, whichever one. or he might end up, not feeling great. Bueller will be potentially there in a potential game 7. I definitely think this series is going at least 6. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see it go 7, and I think that's probably it's probably pretty likely it goes 7, honestly, again. So but it's definitely been a good series so far, very entertaining. Obviously, as a Braves or Dodgers fans, we are very you know very up and down about it. We have a lot of emotions in it, but I think for people who are watching around the game, it's been a very entertaining series so far. So it's definitely what baseball needs, and of course, obviously the Houston Boston series hasn't been quite as entertaining just because a few of the games were runaways. But that series, if Houston's able to pull out tonight, it could end up being a great finish to the series. So definitely some exciting games going on right now.
Yeah, it really has been, and you mentioned it right there. But this series has kind of been everything that the ALCS doesn't have. Close games, nail biting games, that postseason baseball feel, where that's kind of been zapped out of that ALCS outside of game 1, really. And for a long part of that game, it didn't even really feel like it was a close game either. Um, so, like you said, this series, I could see it going 6 or 7. It's just going to basically depend on whose bullpen, like you mentioned, whose bullpen steps up more, because the Dodgers have announced Urias is going tomorrow in game 4, while the Braves are going to a bullpen game. So if you look at the Dodgers, like they have to win that game tomorrow, and has to look at it in their eyes, because then you're going to have Fried in game 5 while you're pitching a bullpen game, kind of like how game 1 was. The Braves are going to look like, hey, we have to win that one, because even given Scherzer and what Bueller's struggles were the past 2 games, you still don't feel great going into those 2 games if you have to win both of them. So it's this tomorrow's game is going to be a very pivotal for this series to see which way it's really going to go. Because it could change the whole landslide of it. It could make it one where the Braves feel really confident, or where the Dodgers kind of feel themselves are back in the driver's seat like they usually think they are.
Yeah, so tomorrow's game is extremely important. But I mean, the thing about this series is if you were watching the games, the Dodgers had opportunities in games 1 and 2, and
Yeah.
you feel like for the Braves that you built up in 1 and 2, that lead that's going to keep you in this series, that you're a big underdog in, and you get down late in this series, games 5, 6, 7, and anything can happen at that point. Whereas the series, honestly, this series, the way it's played out, very easily could be basically over in the Dodgers' favor right now. So um, for the Braves, the ability to have those 2 comeback wins, games 1 and 2. I guess game 1 wasn't really a comeback win, but that was very important, to be able to take those. And then obviously today's game was super important for the Dodgers because you got to win. If you're down 2-0 and Walker Buehler's pitching, you absolutely have to win that game to stay alive, and they did. And it wasn't the way that they were expecting to win it, with Walker Buehler pitching a great game, and the ability to get a few runs late off of Charlie Morton or somebody. It was kind of the opposite way. They got Walker Buehler didn't pitch very well, but the Dodgers were able to make it up against the bullpen that had been really good in the postseason so far. So this series has been crazy. A lot of unexpected stuff happening. Some good games. A lot of storylines. You look at the ALCS, and it hadn't been quite as entertaining because of the 2 blowout games. I'm sure Red Sox fans don't agree with that. I think they're pretty entertained by watching their team hit grand slams every other inning. But game 1 was entertaining, and this game right now is going. It's pretty good right now too. So we'll see what happens. Both of these series have the potential to end up being instant classics, in my opinion. And we're just moving right along. We're just I think the series both end on before Sunday or before Monday. So the World Series starts Tuesday. So
Yeah,
um,
the World Series starts a week from today.
yeah, so we'll have answers here soon.
Yeah, so maybe we'll record on Monday next week.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's going to be the plan.
so we can get that in before the World Series starts, because that's going to be insane. but like you said, both series can be instant classics. I mean, they've both had their own different storylines. With the battle for the pitching, who's gonna be able to pitch actually in that Houston Boston series versus the Atlanta and Dodgers one, is which offense is going to kind of come through. It's been crazy for both ones. I think the worst part about it is that, at least for the NLCS, this series would be 10 times funner if it had Ronald Acuna and Max Muncy in it. Like, I think we're missing that a lot, that Acuna's energy isn't here. Muncy, who's been arguably one of the Dodgers' best players this year, isn't in there. They both don't know. I mean, we know Acuna with his torn ACL won't be able to play. Muncy most likely won't be able to play if either of these teams move on. But I could just imagine what the series would be like if they had those two.
Yeah, I mean, and not just those two, but you also have Kershaw. You have Jorge Soler, who was fantastic for the Braves down the stretch. I mean, it's more than just the two of those. But I mean, obviously, this would be totally different with Ronald Acuna Jr., who was on pace to win MVP in a runaway, really, and then Max Muncy, who was fantastic all year, and just adds another dynamic. And also the fact that Justin Turner is banged up too. He's had a little bit of a neck issue, and he has not looked good at all in this series so far.
Yeah, neither has Trey Turner. So
Yeah, which is shocking because Trey Turner has hit the Braves better than anybody ever. Like when he was with the Nationals, it was every time it was like 3 for 4, 2 for 3 with a walk, 4 for 5. Like,
and it's not just in the NLCS. This is through the NLDS as well. So there's a stat I saw earlier. Since the start of the NLDS, Trey Turner and Justin Turner are combined 7 for 60. That is a 116 batting average.
Yeah, that's very very disappointing for a guy who is so coveted and won the batting title this year. So
yeah, it is. But like we said, some fantastic series here. We have Game 4 going on of the ALCS right now. We'll have Game 4 of the NLCS tomorrow, and Game 5 tomorrow. So we could technically see if Boston wins today and tomorrow, they could wrap it up right away.
Yeah, for sure.
But like you said, if a potential Game 7 would be on Sunday against the Dodgers and the Braves, so we'll plan on recording on Monday to get you guys the preview of the World Series and let you know what's kind of happened throughout this. But you got anything else you wanna wrap this episode up on?
Yeah, just a couple of little notes from around baseball that we haven't mentioned yet, but they're not the biggest notes, but there are something to look at. The Chicago Cubs have hired a GM this week. They hired Carter Hawkins, who was a part of the Indians front office, in their run that they've had recently. Now Jed Hoyer is the president of baseball operations, so he's going to control most of the day-to-day stuff of the big decisions like trades, free agent signings, that kind of stuff. But Carter Hawkins is obviously going to be have a big role in that front office, so that's just one thing to look at. And also the Mets have had some home run candidates that they've kind of taken a swing and miss at. They interviewed, or they tried to get Billy Beane to come in and interview, and he didn't. Or at least he didn't take the job. I don't know if he talked to him at all, but then I think they kind of tried to reach out to Theo Epstein, and he was not interested. So obviously, if you're the Mets, that's very smart. Swing for the fences, try to get the best guy out there. But and if there's no reason, if all they can do is say no, so we'll see what ends up happening in that search for GM after their little issue that they had this year with their former GM and his text messages, I think it was.
Yeah.
So definitely definitely a tough definitely a tough job there with the Mets, that everything's been really scrutinized lately, but something to look for in New York coming forward. So
yeah, also one thing we didn't mention, it happened after last episode and before this one, is that the Cardinals fired their manager Mike Schill, by the way, as well. So he had been the guy who had led them to the playoffs. I think every year he's been their manager. He's taken that. I think even from the year he took over for Mike Matheny, he led them to the playoffs. I believe every single season since.
Yeah.
But they've cited philosophy differences and a whole bunch of whatever. They pretty much it was just out of the blue. I mean, nobody knew it was happening. Even Mike Schilt didn't. I mean, up until I think a week before the season ended, they were talking about an extension between the Cardinals and Mike Schilt, and then they just let him go. So it was kind of weird there. But he's already interviewing for the San Diego Padres position as manager, so that's going to be pretty interesting as well.
Yeah, so that was a really weird one, especially after the way that team, which really wasn't all that talented of a team, figured it out in the second half and turned into a playoff team. So, and then the last note, just to bring up real quick, is Aaron Boone did sign a 3-year extension with the Yankees, so he's back as their manager for the next 3 years, or potentially for the next 3 years, on a new contract. So that's one other note that happened today, but that's not really that big of a deal. Some people were kind of thinking that they might go in a different direction, but obviously, I think the Yankees are pretty happy with the way that Aaron Boone is managed, even though they haven't been able to finish off the postseason, in the last few years. But they have been there and won a lot of baseball games, and it's just been winner take all games that go their way. So, going forward, they're going to have Aaron Boone as their manager to continue.
Yeah, that was pretty. Just citing off that real quick, it was interesting. Did you hear what Brian Cashman said about that?
He said that he had input, but it was Steinbrenner's call or
No,
something.
pretty much what Cashman came out and said is that pretty much like it's his fault that Boone was even considering getting fired because he messed up on building this team, and that he plans on pretty much doing a massive overhaul on the roster this offseason.
Yeah, that makes sense because the Yankees have way too much swing and miss. Like they don't have any contact guys except LeMahieu. So
it's just interesting. It provides an interesting look into this offseason because if a team like the Yankees are willing to completely overhaul their roster, that can make the offseason very, very interesting because they can play on anybody they want. We have a big shortstop market this year. They can play on any of those if they want to. They have very good prospects. They can play on any trade that they want to. They have a guy who like Joey Gallo, who they just traded for, who will be in demand, that they could even make a trade with. It's going to be interesting to say the least for the Yankees this offseason, but we'll talk more about that during the actual offseason, but just a little note on that.
Yep. So that's
pretty much all you got?
Yeah, I think so. We'll see what happens. I'm planning on potentially going to one of the World Series games if the Atlanta Braves make it, if I can afford the tickets. I don't know how much they're going to end up being, but I'm considering going to one of the games. That would be a lot of fun. But, I really don't expect them to pull off the series, with the way that the Dodgers are, the depth of that lineup and stuff. But we'll see. So we'll that would be a pretty good time. But we'll see what happens. I think the rest of these series are going to be great, and I'm excited for that, and excited for the World Series next week starting, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely, it will be, and I will not be going to a World Series game if it gets to Los Angeles because I can definitely not afford what that ticket would be like. But anyways, thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of the Bat Flip Podcast, and we'll catch you guys next Monday.
Thanks, everybody.